Welcome to the Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. This is a weekly podcast which looks at every aspect of something which has or will at some point affect us all. And that is grief. Whether you've lost a loved one or about to lose someone you know, or perhaps you're simply trying to help someone navigate their grief and don't know where to start or what to say, then perhaps this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'll be bringing you different stories and experiences of loss, love, hope, and at times humour. Anthony Whelan worked for over 20 years in the banking industry and in finance. You published 2 novels, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And you also worked for Astronomy Ireland as an editor and a reporter. However, that all changed when you lost your partner. And you're now a clinical psychotherapist. So thank you very much for joining me this week.
Absolute pleasure to be in.
Anthony, maybe give me a little bit of background about how you came from banking to the psychotherapy world.
It's been a long journey. Had a very varied career, but worked in banking for a long time. But when my partner passed away, which will be 8 years ago, this January coming, next month, I did not handle it very well.
Okay.
I, went into quite a dark place, I suppose. I kind of self-medicated with alcohol and got to a point where I realised I have to do something about this. So started in therapy myself. With a really fantastic therapist, and started working with kind of alcohol, then moved on very quickly to working with grief and everything that was tied up with that and the loss of Anne-Marie and everything that meant, and then moved into kind of more about myself and my past and history and all of that. And after a few years of doing that, I actually my therapist suggested that I look at a course in psychotherapy, and I looked at the syllabus. It never occurred to me, or I never imagined that I could kind of sit in in that chair. But when I looked at the syllabus, I thought this will really kind of turbocharge the work I'm doing in myself and exploring what I'm about and what my drivers are and stuff like that. So started the course. As part of the course, you have to do work as a psychotherapist under clinical supervision and all of that, and just found the experience to be. I find it difficult to put words on it. It's awe-inspiring. It's a magical kind of piece of work when you're sitting with someone, as I did myself, I suppose. But when you're sitting with someone and they're dealing with some very deep issue or issues. And kind of figuring out, why they're having the impact they're having, how they can start to manage that, how they can integrate it, and seeing people, just overcoming, be it anxiety, be it bereavement, depression, questions of identity for themselves. So when I finished the course, I said, this is really, really what I want to do.
And this all stems back to losing Anne-Marie.
It does, yeah. Yeah.
Because
I often think she'd be, I'm sure she's kind of...
Would she be surprised?
I don't know if she'd be surprised. I think she'd certainly be very, very happy at kind of the direction, my life has taken and how, that experience of, being with her, and everything that she taught me while we were together, and then that loss, how it has kind of contributed to where I am today. So I'm not sure she'd be surprised, but I think she'd be delighted that it has kind of worked out the way it has. Yeah.
How did you know? What was the sort of the moment that you went, this has to stop, I need to change my life?
I essentially, what I realised long afterwards when I was in therapy, I had a panic attack one night and ended up just, like curled up in a ball on the floor in the middle of the night, kind of going, how can I just get through this night? And that was the moment where I had known before that, even my GP had kind of gotten to the point of advising me this was something I needed to look at and whatever. So, and it was actually my GP who gave me the name of the therapist. That was the kind of the low point, if you will. That was the one where I kind of went, oh, well, like, I'm in trouble here. I need to do something. That was the...
Because it is, for a lot of people, there is that one moment where you just go, okay, I need something. Whether it's sort of, maybe you've taken time off work and you're sort of going, I need to go back to work. Or you're buying a bottle of wine every day and suddenly you get to the point where I can't keep doing this.
Yes.
There is that pivotal
Absolutely.
moment.
There often is. And I think maybe in some ways there kind of has to be, because, you see, any of these challenges, like bereavement and the grief you go through, it's such a complex and such a, up and down and back and forward kind of a process that we can get lost very easily and not realise, just how bad things are. So many things. Like stress can be very, very like that. A lot of mental health issues, things like anxiety, depression. We can kind of, because we make it through each day, and we don't really realise, just how, damaged or how dysfunctional or how unhealthy things are. And sometimes it takes that kind of, some kind of a moment. Sometimes it can be a friend, turning around and kind of going, listen, buddy, you're in a bad place. You need to do something. Very often there does need to be that kind of wake-up call, really, I suppose. Yeah.
And then, but changing career is very scary as well, So it's
I'm doing it very gradually. I haven't fully left the other world as yet, because there's bills to pay and all that kind of stuff. And I have great colleagues there, and I enjoy that work as well. But certainly embarking on something new can be scary, but it's really exciting as well. And I suppose the thing for me is that when it's something that is this, I say, it's not just that I enjoy the work, it's it's a real privilege and it's an honour, that somebody trusts you enough to come in. They're talking very often about things they have not spoken to a single solitary soul before. So it's a really privileged position, and it's, all my working life, no matter how much I've enjoyed a job, there always is that thing of kind of, oh God, to go to work, Whereas this is, the more of it you can do, the better. It's as I say, I can't think of any other word. It's a real privilege.
Yeah, and it does give you a good, I suppose, or I'd imagine, a good sort of feeling of self-worth.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And a feeling that you're doing something that's worthwhile. When you're working particularly in big organisations, no matter how, valuable the work is, ultimately you're one of, X thousand people. Whereas this is one-on-one. And you're working with a small number of clients. They're coming into you every week. As I say, working through issues. You kind of see progress, hopefully, over the weeks. Sometimes you see kind of, people going backward a bit, which is a very natural thing that can be very scary when you're working through a process like grief or any other issue. So just being able to kind of go in and spend that time with someone it's a fantastic feeling. Yeah.
Because often when you lose somebody, you can lose your own self-confidence. I don't know whether it's vulnerability or whether it's just you've lost your right hand or what it is, but you can feel like really self-conscious. You can not feel very confident.
Yeah.
So doing what you're doing, has that brought your confidence back?
I would say it has, yes, absolutely. Both my own therapy and kind of, understanding, because Anne-Marie was like life and soul at the party. I would be, quite quiet a lot of the time. Yeah. Anne-Marie was just, as I say, absolutely life and soul of the party. So if we were, at a social event, it was very easy for me. All I had to do was go with Anne-Marie. And, everything kind of happened, everything kind of revolved around, and I could just enjoy the experience. I found, going to events without her extremely difficult.
Yeah.
But again, through my own therapy, I came to understand, where all that came from. So, certainly when you lose somebody, like you're losing, again, it's hard to describe, but like part of your identity, part of who you are, especially as a couple, particularly if you've kind of identified very strongly as, part of a couple. And so, it can take a long time to get that back. And certainly my experience, I suppose, like a month after Anne-Marie had passed away, I started reading a lot about grief and doing a bit of kind of research and about complicated grief and, Kubler-Ross and the stages of grief and all that, really because I genuinely thought I was going insane. Because there was just so much going on in my head, so many conflicting emotions kind of bouncing around the place, feeling 10 things at once and then feeling nothing. And as I say, at one point I just went like, this can't be normal. Like I'm actually losing my mind.
And because everybody experiences it differently,
it's such a unique process.
And then you could be sort of walking along the street and just burst into tears for no reason. You go, why am I doing that?
Absolutely.
I should be fine. But it's an unbelievably complex thing.
Yes.
And personally, I don't believe in the stages of grief.
Okay.
It's my own.
Yeah.
I think everyone grieves differently.
Yeah.
I don't think there can be stages of grief because of that.
Yeah.
But
for me, certainly the value in Kubler-Ross's stuff in the stages of grief, because she herself, was very emphatic that this is not a linear process. This is not you go through stage one, then she was really just kind of giving names to, putting the different kind of emotions and feelings into buckets. So there's a denial, there's an anger, there's a bargaining, there's an acceptance. But she was very much, you go forward and backwards. You can be in multiple stages at once. You can be in no stage at all. So it's a very complex kind of process to go through, and different lengths for different people. And then, as I say, you can get to the stage where you kind of think, I'm okay, and then something can throw you. Sometimes nothing can throw you. And I know for myself, I still don't know why, that Anne-Marie's 5th anniversary was particularly difficult. When I had gotten to the stage of, you've gotten through the first Christmas, the first anniversary, and then the second and the third. For some reason, the 5th one threw me just completely.
Bizarre.
Still no notion why, but it's a very. But I think that the really, really critical piece there is giving yourself just that time and space, and kind of there will be times where just out of the blue this destroys me again. Yeah, that's okay.
You can come out the other side. Yeah,
exactly.
And I think that's the thing. Now, one of the times, of course, that is possibly the most trickiest for people is Christmas.
Yes.
And it can just be, you could be fine walking out the door going to something, and it could just be, no, I can't do it. You could be fine going to one thing one Saturday over Christmas, and then a few days later you can't go to something else.
Yeah.
For people at any point going through grief or bereavement, what can they do, I suppose, to mind themselves first and foremost? And navigate this time. Yeah,
you see, I suppose again, it is such an individual process. So there's no kind of, one answer to that question. I'm just kind of dodging it a little bit. But, the first thing I would say, and the single most important thing, is having that, empathy and understanding for yourself, first of all. Yeah. Like allowing yourself to grieve. There's no right way, there's no wrong way. Every person is different. So, because, sometimes someone will be kind of, like, I'm not feeling destroyed today, and then they'll be guilty about that, or, whatever. So I think the first thing I would say is giving yourself time and space. The second piece, I think, maybe not for everybody, but I think for a lot of people, is, especially in special occasions like Christmas, it's involving your departed. Like having them around in some shape or fashion. Like in my house, we have I won't go into the long story of it, but there's a Christmas decoration which looks like a kind of a believe kind of a sign. In the family, it's called the Belififith sign. But Anne-Marie loved Christmas, and she loved the decorations, and the house would always be done up and that. So, like, that is always put up on the mantelpiece exactly the way Anne-Marie would have had it. And, we're surrounded by all our stuff for Christmas anyway, because all the boxes and boxes of decorations. But that's a particular kind of a focal point that, every time we look at it, that's Anne-Marie, So I would say very often, trying to, involve the person that's gone in the celebration. I know I guess one of the North American indigenous tribes have a belief that you die twice. The first time you die, the less important one, is when your body stops working. And the second time you die is the last time somebody thinks of you. And I always love that thought that,
So you're never going to die, really, because
exactly,
people think of you all the time.
Exactly, so like as long as, someone is in your thoughts, in your heart, like their body is gone, but they're not, and they're still influencing us. God knows, and and I know myself, and I know children, family members, how often they'll kind of say, "Oh, I was thinking of Anne-Marie when I was doing this," or So like she's still there. The people who have left us, they're in our thoughts, they're in our hearts, and that's a very real kind of a presence.
Sometimes as well. Like this time of the year, people don't want to mention the person that's gone because they're afraid of setting somebody off, for want of a better phrase. But I sort of think it's nice for the person when the other person is mentioned.
Yes, yeah. I do too. And so certainly in our family, Anne-Marie's always a presence, but particularly at Christmas because of the whole decorations piece and everything. I suppose that's the individual piece, like if somebody says, look, I'm just finding it really difficult and I just don't want to be thinking of them, I think we have to give that person that time and space, but I would be kind of wary of, is that the healthiest way to approach it? And for some people, at some times, maybe it is, and that's absolutely fine. But I think sooner or later we have to kind of, come back to being able to talk about the person who's gone. And the more important they were to us, the more attached we were to them, I think the more important it is that we're talking about them, thinking about them, including them in our day-to-day lives as much as we can,
Yeah. I mean, we've talked a bit a couple of weeks ago about kids and Christmas and kids that are bereaved or going through grief and sort of traditions and try and keep some traditions the same and be open with what traditions they like to do the same way or differently or whatever. Is that the same with adults? Is that the sort of the same?
I think it is. Yeah. The whole Christmas decoration in my house is all about Anne-Marie, but the sign on the mantelpiece particularly is. And it's very much about, and Anne-Marie's family. We go to the graveyard on Christmas Eve, light a candle, as they have done. Her father predeceased her, and now we do for Anne-Marie and her father. So there are those kind of traditions that, as adults as well, that we kind of, keep alive. Again, it's about keeping the person present,
with us,
keeping them with us. Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Is there anything you would recommend people to avoid? Is that
again,
something that was sort of a bit ambiguous, but
no, I think the main thing, like for me, and maybe this is speaking partly to my own experience, but I would avoid kind of over indulging in any kind of alcohol, drugs, numbing kind of things, anything mood altering. Because that kind of escapism generally comes back to bite you at some point. It's a kind of a temporary kind of staving off of feelings, and that's usually not healthy. So I would say avoiding those kinds of behaviours, trying to include the person in your life, and ultimately, if you're finding that difficult, and it doesn't have to be a therapist, but talking to somebody, a trusted family member, a friend, a GP, a counsellor, a therapist, because ultimately at some point we need to deal with it. We need to kind of work through it. And if we repress it 9 times out of 10, it will come out later in some shape or fashion. Probably. And
especially, I think, around this time of the year, because it's sort of, a lot of the time it's all the Christmas festivities are like white noise. It's like this sort of, can't go into a shop without it all being happy and jolly. And we've got to remember as well that you don't know, the person beside you mightn't be feeling happy and jolly either.
Yes.
So it is okay as well, I suppose, if somebody just wants to go, do you know what, I'm just going to close the door. I don't want to know. I'll talk to you on the 1st of Jan.
Yes. Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's where you have to give people time and space, and every person is so unique. And it's just making sure, I suppose, that somebody who's addressing it in that way knows there is an ear whenever they want it. There is a shoulder whenever they need it, so that they don't feel isolated. But sometimes it is a case of just, do you know what, I just need a bit of time, just not thinking, not feeling. That's okay.
Yeah. And just be there.
Yes,
really.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so you're going to join us for the next episode so that we can talk about the new year, which is also a difficult time and a triggering time for a lot of people. So for now, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Grief Pod with Venetia Quick. You can listen on SoundCloud or wherever you get your podcasts. We also have an online community on Facebook, The Grief Pod, or on Instagram @GriefPod Series.